Okay, so welcome everyone to this webinar about how you can make your chatbots more visually appealing. A lot of you might be wondering why we have to touch on a topic like this. We'll obviously discuss it in the webinar itself, but why do we have to talk about how chatbots look? Isn't the whole point of a chatbot that the interaction happens through the text of the chatbot, not through the visuals? This isn't a traditional app. This isn't a traditional landing page where you're fully dependent on the graphical user interface elements of the page. You're more dependent on the text. We constantly harp on about this in our LinkedIn posts and our blog posts. So why are we focusing on this today? And to give you a sneak peek into what we're going to be talking about, it sort of boils down to branding. It boils down to making your chatbots more friendly to your users. Yeah, those are pretty much the two reasons. Let's end this webinar now. We'll get into a little bit more detail about it in a couple of minutes here. But as always, when we start these webinars, we like to give you a little bit of an overview of what we are going to be talking about in the webinar, just so that you have a sense of what you can expect over the course of the next hour or so. So as always, we like to begin the webinar with intros. Just to tell you who I am, tell you who the company is. This is especially for the newer viewers. I noticed that there are a couple of people who I have not seen in these webinars before, some familiar faces, but a couple of people who I have not seen in these webinars before. And for your viewing pleasure, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am and who Tarz is as a company, just so that you guys know where our knowledge in this webinar is coming from, so that we don't seem like, or at least I don't seem like, a disembodied head on your screen telling you what you should and shouldn't do in your marketing campaigns, in your customer service operation, etc. After we finish those intros, we can jump into the actual meat of the topic. So we're going to first discuss why you need your bots to look visually appealing. So this is essentially, why are we hosting this webinar today? The question that I posed at the beginning. And I already told you the two reasons, but we'll go into a little bit more depth of why those two reasons are important and why you want your bots to look visually appealing to the user. After that, we're going to switch to my favorite part of the webinar, which is where we take a sort of hands-on look at making bots more visually appealing. I'm going to jump into the Tarz Builder, and instead of having a bunch of slides on the screen where I tell you what you can do to make your bots more visually appealing, I'm actually going to show you what you can do to make your bots more visually appealing in the Tarz Builder. If you have a Tarz account, if you have a chatbot, you can actually follow along. So be sure to open up your account, be sure to open up the chatbot you're working on. And if you follow along, you can improve how your chatbot looks. Just by watching this webinar. By the end of this hour, you can have a chatbot that is considerably better looking than it was at the beginning of the webinar. Finally, in the fourth part of this webinar, we will have a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions about anything that I said through the webinar, that will be your opportunity to ask me. That being said, throughout the webinar, if you think of a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A section or in the chat of this webinar. I might not be able to get to it in the course of the webinar, and if I don't, I will answer it in the Q&A section. But if it makes sense to answer it during the webinar, I will do my best to answer it while we are actually going through the content in the webinar. Now with that, let's move on to intros. First, let's get started with who I am. I'm Arnav, a content marketer over here at Tarz. And essentially what my job is to create content just like this webinar to help bot creators, help marketers, help customer support folks get the most out of their chatbots. So not just webinars, I also make webinars, best practices, guides. We also started a podcast recently, which you guys should definitely go check out. Let me see if I can get one of my teammates to drop the podcast link in the chat. Please check that out. But the whole point behind all of these resources is you listen to them, you watch them, you read them, and you learn more about how you can use chatbots in your business to make your business more efficient, and ideally see the results that you're hoping to see with them. So whether that's a higher conversion rate, whether that's more customer support tickets automated, uh, watching these webinars, listening to our podcast, reading our guides, all of the content that I create will help you create better chatbots. And I just noticed that my colleague Abhilash has actually shared the podcast link in the chat. Be sure to check that out, guys. We've been working really hard on this. We have a couple of episodes coming out soon. We're working on our frequency a little bit, being a little more consistent with them, but there's enough for you guys to jump into on the page right now. Anyways, with that, we can talk a little bit about who we are as a company. So you can see our logo up here in the top left. We actually even have a blog post on how we came up with this logo. We write pretty much everything that we do. Anyways, Tarz has been around since 2016, so 4-ish years, a little more than 4 years. And what we have been doing in that time is we have been helping marketers primarily boost their conversion rates using conversational tech. So the way that looks is if you're new to the Tarz, platform, is we go onto your landing page, we go onto your website, and we replace the boring lead capture forms that you have with chatbots. And what we have found is that when you make that switch, when you switch from a regular lead capture form, which has been a staple of the digital marketing world since digital marketing existed, to a chatbot, you see on average 50% increase in your conversion rate. So that means if you were getting 100 leads on your ad spend before, on your marketing spend before, you now get 150 leads without increasing their marketing spend, just by shifting from a form to a chatbot. Why does that happen? Well, we looked into it, and it turns out that people don't like filling forms. Surprise, surprise. So when you can transform that form filling experience into a chat experience, you can transform a boring bureaucratic process into a personalized conversation with a customer service rep. And that goes a long way in improving the user experience for users, making them less likely to drop from your page when they click on and actually share their lead information with you. What we don't have on the slide that we also do is we help businesses automate customer support tickets. This has been particularly important the last couple of months as people have been working from home, and customer support teams have been put under quite a bit of strain. We have been helping companies automate their customer support tickets using chatbots. So the same principle applies of being more engaging. The traditional ways that you get customer service done are you either have self-serve resources on your website, which no one's going to read because people don't read anymore, or you can have a live chat or a phone system. But those, while those are good, they have the issue where after work hours, how do you give people service if the volume of people getting submitting requests at one go gets too high? You start to have wait times, and chatbots sort of sit in the ideal middle ground where they can talk to as many people as they want at a given time. So there's no wait times. So they solve the problem of live chat and phone calls, but they are an actual conversation. So they're not as unengaging as your self-serve customer service tools. And actually the best use case, I'd say, of our chatbots is when you merge those two together. So a lot of people on their landing pages, they have a customer service chatbot that answers questions of users, and when they're ready, captures their lead information. In fact, we are going to be taking a look at one of those chatbots today. The chatbot we are going to be beautifying essentially is a customer service plus lead gen chatbot. Now, with those intros out of the way, let's discuss a little bit more about why your chatbots need to be visually appealing. Oh, it looks like my Google Slides had a little bit of a glitch there, but that's okay. We will forgive it. I don't know why Google Slides works perfectly when I'm not in Zoom, and then when I am in Zoom, when I'm on a webinar live streaming, it always has these tiny little glitches. But before we jump into how you can make your chatbots more visually appealing, which is the real topic of this webinar, we need to discuss why you want to do this. So I'm going to tell you a bunch of tactics that you can use in your chatbots today. But why do you want to go to the effort of implementing them? And broadly speaking, it boils down to two reasons. The first one has to do with branding. You can think of your chatbot as any other digital asset in your portfolio. You have landing pages, you have websites, maybe you have physical pieces of branding, your brochures. If you are the sort of business which needs that, maybe not anymore because there's not much happening in person, so you can't really hand people brochures. But you have all of these other assets in your portfolio. You have all of these other digital assets, these physical assets. And all of them have your branding infused in them through and through. The same principle applies to your chatbots. Your chatbots are a digital asset that is in your portfolio. They represent your company, just like your landing page would, just like your website would. Would you ever put a landing page out there that does not have your branding on it? Would you ever put a landing page out there that doesn't have your brand colors on it? You likely wouldn't. So the same principle applies to your chatbot. And this isn't sort of a thing that we do just for the sake of it. Branding 101, the reason that you want to make your assets recognizable with your brand colors in them, with your brand voice in them, the reason you want to do that is twofold in my assessment. So the first reason you'd want to do that is because generic looking pages, generic looking chatbots, when people land on them, this is especially applicable to digital assets, they look kind of spammy. If you landed on a page that said it was a Bank of America page, but you didn't see a Bank of America logo, you didn't see the Bank of America colors, you'd think that this was a scammer trying to get your details and cheat you out of some money. So you really want to add your brand into your chatbot, just like you would your landing pages. Otherwise, it runs the risk of looking scammy, and no one is going to share their lead information with a chatbot that looks like a scam. The second reason that you want to add your branding to your chatbots and to pretty much any of your digital assets is because of brand recall. That's the main reason. That's what most people talk about in the context of branding in business schools, and even if you listen to any like business podcasts or any business related educational material, the reason people talk about branding, the reason people talk about building a brand is to create an identity that is recognizable to your customers. If you have a sort of brand aesthetic, you want your customers to be able to pick your brand out of a crowd if they are confronted with that crowd. So by adding brand into your chatbot, if someone comes, clicks on your ad, lands onto your conversation landing page or lands onto your regular landing page where there's a chatbot, they interact with that chatbot for a couple of minutes and then they drop. You want them to leave that interaction knowing exactly what your brand looks like. So if you retarget them in the future through a retargeting ad, through a display ad, they remember, yeah, I had a conversation with that chatbot once. I know exactly what this brand is. If on the other hand, you have a retargeting ad, you have a display ad that has your branding in it, like most display and retargeting ads do, but you have a chatbot that doesn't, maybe the person is not going to make that connection. Maybe they aren't going to make the connection between that conversation that they had with the chatbot and that ad that they're seeing. And if they don't make that connection, then they're less likely to actually click on that ad. They're less likely to notice the ad. And if they're less likely to notice the ad, they're less likely to click on it. And that's obviously something you want to avoid as a marketer. That's something that you want to avoid as a business, because the whole point of running ads is to get people to click on them and share their details with you. So that is my spiel on why, on the first reason you want to make your chatbots look more visually appealing. It boils down to branding. The second reason that you would want your chatbot to be more visually appealing is, or actually I had the slide in here to sort of demonstrate to you guys what it looks like when a chatbot is visually appealing or when it looks generic. As you can see from um, our slide aesthetic in the background, we have a set of colors that we use at Tarz that are our brand colors, purple and green. Now, which of these two chatbots looks more like a Tarz chatbot to you? Is it the one on the left, which looks sort of generic, like it's iMessage or Facebook Messenger, or is it the one on the right that has our brand colors infused into it? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most of you guys think it's the one on the right. That's the one I think at the very least. Um, and and to follow up with the two reasons that I gave about why this is important, which of these looks more generic or more like a scam, and which of these looks like it looks more identifiable, which of them looks like you could pick it out of a crowd. Definitely the second one on both counts. Now with that, we can move on to the second reason you want to make your chatbots more visually appealing. And this boils down to something that we have talked about a lot in our previous webinars. If you attended the webinar we hosted right before this one, it was, I think, 2 or 3 weeks back, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But surprise, surprise, your users, your visitors, your prospects are human beings. And you want to make your chatbot, you want to make any of your digital assets as usable as possible, as pleasant as possible for those human beings who are clicking onto them and using them. Now, what do we know about people? What do we know about ourselves? We know that we like seeing visuals on a page. We're very visual creatures. We tend to respond better to them. If you are explaining, especially a complex concept to someone, it's always better to show it to them visually than it is to show it to them in a written format. That's why a lot more people watch YouTube videos about educational content rather than read articles about them. It's because when you show something to someone, uh, they retain it much better. They're more likely to actually go through and listen to the whole thing, watch the whole thing, than if you just put a wall of text in front of them and expect them to read that. Especially with attention spans as low as they are today, people just don't have the inclination or desire to read through a bunch of text. And you can more efficiently convey the same information through a visual, maybe. And there are a lot of cliches that are coming to me right now, which sort of get at this idea. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Same principle applies over here. Instead of writing an essay of words, you can use a visual to convey the same message. There's another one that came to my mind, but slipped my mind right now. So we can get back to that later. And the second element to this, so we're breaking down this reason into two elements again. The second element to this this reason over here is that you also want your chatbot to, when we say we're making your chatbot feel more human friendly, you also want your chatbot to feel more human, like we discussed in our previous webinar. And human beings, when we are chatting with our friends and family, we use visual elements in our chat. We send GIFs to each other. We send emojis to each other. We send videos to each other. And if you want your chatbot to feel more human, you can see the reasons why you want that in our previous webinar, by the way. Then you want to add some amount of visual elements to your chatbot as well, just to make it feel like it's an actual human being talking to you, someone who would share the sorts of visual content that a human being would, or some bot that would. And with that, we are actually done with the two reasons that you would want to make your chatbots look more visually appealing. And we are ready to get into the more practical aspect of implementing some tactics to make your chatbots look more visually appealing. And as I promised, rather than staying in these slides, because there's only so long you can stare at a slide deck, I'm actually going to jump out of the slides and jump into the Tarz Builder. So this is actually, if you guys attended the previous webinar, this should be a familiar bot to you guys. This is the bot that I created in the previous webinar. I added a couple of extra gambits over here for FAQs. I think the last time the chatbot that we played around with was just the lead generation part, which over here you can see where I'm asking for name, email, house amount, down payment, credit score, and then the end. That is the lead generation part. I've added this entire FAQ part over here where you can ask questions about credit score, the financial index, late payment, or get connected to an agent through Zendesk. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, this is a lead generation plus FAQ chatbot for a fictional mortgage company called Tarz Finance. We obviously sell chatbots, but in the world of this webinar, we sell mortgages. And to that end, we built this chatbot to answer users' queries and capture leads. Now, how this chatbot looks when you use it, this is what it looks like. Let me just refresh the page to show you what it looks like on load. It takes a couple of seconds to type each message. We discussed why we want this to happen in the previous webinar. So again, please check that out. And then you can go in one of two directions. You can say, I have a question. The chatbot tries to answer the question on its own by presenting you with a set of FAQs. So let's go with the first one. How does my credit score affect my mortgage rate? It answers the question. By the way, I got these answers and I got these questions to give them credit from this Bank of America page over here about mortgages. Just want to give them credit where credit is due. I did not come up with the text over here. I got it from Bank of America. If the prospect gets a question answered and they want to continue in the lead generation flow, if they're like, okay, I know everything that I need to know about mortgages. I'm ready to get a free mortgage quote. They can do that. I seem to have mixed up the connections over here a little bit, but we can fix that. Yeah, the connections are a little bit mixed up, but that shouldn't affect us in this webinar because we're not really dealing with the connections side of things. I seem to have mixed up the connections where instead of when it says get a free mortgage quote, it connects them to an agent instead of taking them in the lead generation flow. So we can actually fix that really easily. And then get into the visual elements of the page. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a stickler when it comes to having my chatbots working well. So, and it should only take us a couple of seconds to fix it. So over here, we have fixed it. If this is your first time looking at how the chatbot builder works, this is essentially how it works. It's a visual workflow tool where you just create a flow chart with of these little things called gambits, and in each gambit you have a single back and forth. You have the text from the user, and you have the user input, and you string these together to create a conversation. So over here, the chatbot says these messages over here, the user can respond with these two buttons. Depending on which button the user selects, they either are taken into the lead generation flow down here where we ask them for their name, email, house amount, or they're taken to the FAQ flow where they can select from the menu of FAQs, just like I said. And then after they get their FAQs answered, they can either ask another question. So go back to the FAQs, connect themselves with an agent. So get connected over Zendesk, or get a free mortgage quote, which is go into the lead generation flow. Now that we've got those basics out of the way, the thing that I want to draw your attention to in this chatbot, the thing that we did not discuss in our previous webinar when we built this chatbot or when we were making this chatbot a little better, is that it's visually very plain. It's got the default theme on. Excuse me. Got something caught in my throat. It's got the default Tarz theme on, and the default Tarz theme looks extremely generic. We made it as generic as possible so that it appeals to everyone. But the default Tarz theme essentially looks like an iMessage. It looks like a Facebook Messenger. It doesn't really look like it belongs to any company. Unless your business has blue and gray and white as its brand colors, this chatbot likely is not going to fit with your brand with your brand aesthetic. In fact, take a look at the Tarz website. Let's go to the Tarz website over here. This is the Tarz website. We have purple and green and a lot of white and black on the website as well. But our brand colors are clearly purple and green. This chatbot over here clearly doesn't fit into the context of this this website. So our job is going to be to make this chatbot feel like it fits more in line with our website over here. Even though this is a finance chatbot and our website is oriented towards conversational landing pages and chatbots. And the way we go about this, the way we go about transforming this chatbot, is, again, I'm going to divide this into two parts. I feel like that's the overarching theme of this webinar: divide everything into two parts. I'm going to divide this into two parts. The first is going to be the changes that you can make in the message bubble. So what changes can you make in the actual messaging of the chatbot to make it more visually appealing? We're going to have some pretty easy tactics to implement here. It's not going to be anything special for you guys, especially if you guys use chat on a daily basis to talk to your friends and family. It's going to be very familiar stuff for you guys. And then the second part that we are going to get into is outside of the message bubble. So this is where we leave the messaging and we make the rest of the interface, the actual visual elements that make up the chat interface, we make them look more visually appealing. So first, let's start with the in the bubble changes that you can make. Now, the first one, this is going to be an obvious one, is you can just add images in your message bubbles. And there are a couple of ways you can go about doing this. One, if we go back to the slides over here, one is you can add images into your message bubbles to add branding to your chatbot. So to make your chatbot more recognizable as a Tarz chatbot, or whatever your business is, make it more recognizable as that chatbot. And one easy way to do this is to take your logo. So over here, I have this logo uploaded over here on Imager. I'm going to right click on it, hit copy image address, jump back into my chatbot. And in the first gambit, when I say welcome to Tarz Finance, I'm going to throw the logo in over here, so that in the first gambit, when I open it up, when it loads up, instead of just being text on a page, it says, welcome to Tarz Finance, and they're greeted with the Tarz logo. Now, if someone lands on this page, even if they don't proceed with the interaction, that principle of branding applies. They've seen our logo. If they see this logo again on a display ad, they are more likely to remember what this logo looks like than what all of this text over here says. So even if we include all of this text in a display ad, it's likely they're not going to make the connection between that display ad and this chatbot interaction that they've had. But if we have our logo up here, and then we have our logo again on that retargeting ad, there is a higher chance that they'll make that connection. They'll think to themselves, this is the chatbot I interacted with. This is when I was looking for a mortgage the other day. Maybe I'll click on it, maybe I won't. But even if I don't, it's going to solidify the brand recall in my mind. I now have seen this brand twice. So that is one easy way to add a visual element in the bubble. The second way that you can add images, and this in my opinion is maybe a little bit more interesting, is you can add images to your chatbot to explain complex concepts. So remember how we spoke about in Reason 2, making your bots more human friendly, and how complex concepts, it's hard to explain complex concepts just through text. People respond better to visual elements. Well, the same principle applies over here. So for example, let's go into one of these FAQs. We have this one on how your credit score affects your mortgage rate. Now we have these two big blocks of text over here. They're not quite paragraphs. They're probably under tweet length. I'm going to say that they're under 280 characters. But if you send these messages to someone, so let's go to, I have a question, and select the first FAQ. How does my credit score affect my mortgage rate? You can see that these two messages take up a lot of the page. Right now, if you look at the page, all you're seeing is a bunch of text. The text is siloed into, oh, I just put my hand in the camera, but the text is siloed into little message bubbles, but all you're seeing on the page is text. And I think that there is perhaps a more efficient way using images to demonstrate the same information. And in fact, jumping back to that same Bank of America page, I found that they have this nice little graphic over here. This graphic does have a lot of text in it, but it's displayed as sort of a table, which makes it a little easier to understand how your credit score affects your mortgage rate. So what I did was I took this image, I uploaded it over here to Imager. Again, I just want to give Bank of America all the credit I can. They have some great resources online. If they packaged it as a chatbot so that it wasn't just reading through a boring page like this, and actually having a conversation. Maybe we'll talk about this a little later. It would probably be consumed by a lot more people, but the actual assets that they use in it, the actual visuals that they use in it are actually pretty great. So I'm relying on them heavily for this webinar. So let's copy this image, right click on it, copy image address. and we can throw it into our chatbot over here. So we can say, here's a graphic to help you understand how this works. And we can click the plus. So for the people who missed what I just did there, accidentally deleted the whole message bubble. Here's a graphic to help you understand how this works. Click the plus button over here, and then click the camera button that appears from the menu. And once you select that, it's going to give you the option of adding an image to your chatbot. Now, there are two ways you can go about this. If you click this green button over here, you can upload an image from your computer. But in this case, since I have a link to the image, I'm just going to paste it in the field over here, which says enter image URL. So I'm going to right click, paste. And over there, we have our image appearing in the page. So if I hit save, publish, and then reopen this chatbot, we're going to have to go through the interaction again. We have this branding right up front, the logo of the company. I have a question. Here's a list of FAQs. How does my credit score affect my mortgage rate? Higher credit score. Here's an infographic to help you out. So over here, instead of just having plain text in these message bubbles, we've also given them this infographic that they can use to understand how their credit score affects their monthly payment, how it affects their APR, and how it affects the total amount of interest paid on this sample $200,000 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Now that might seem like a very small addition, but trust me, it goes along. This is a CRO tactic that you can use to convert more of the people that actually land on your chatbot into customers. If you have a complex topic that you are trying to discuss in your FAQs, try to use visuals wherever possible. And if you're wondering why, if we're using visuals, what's the point of using a chatbot? Chatbots are all about text. So why are we talking about visuals here? If we were doing that, couldn't we just use a regular landing page, or couldn't we just use a regular app or website? Well, that comes back to the comparison that I was making between this page that I got the visual from and our chatbot. On this page, if you land as a prospect, you're reading through all of the text on your own. It's not a very pleasant experience. It feels like you're doing homework, honestly. Whereas in the chatbot, it feels like you're still having that conversation with someone. It's just that they are showing you this infographic to help you out. So the context of the visual is really important. The context over here is a conversation with a customer service rep from this financial services company. And the context over here is reading through an entire blog post about credit scores. Now, which would you rather do? I'm assuming that you would rather have a conversation with the customer service rep than read through an entire blog post about credit scores on your own, but that's just me. In our experience, on average, people do prefer the context of a chatbot. They're more likely to convert. But before we get too excited about these images, there are a couple of other options that we have in the message bubble to essentially achieve the same outcome. The first is you can add a video. So say that you think that this image is not good enough. It's not visual enough. It's not simple enough. We can add another element to this. Say the concept is too complex to capture in one single frame. Maybe we want to add a nice little explainer video in the message bubble so that people understand how their credit score affects their mortgage rate. Well, all we have to do is find a YouTube video that we like, click the share button, click embed over here. We can before we copy their embed code over here, what we are going to do is we're going to adjust the width and the height. So over here, I'm going to make the width maybe 300 pixels, and I'm going to make the height 200. and I am going to hit copy. Once that is copied, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back into this FAQ over here. Let's delete the image. Here's a graphic. Let's change this from here's a graphic to here's a video to help you understand how this works. And in this new message bubble, I created a new message bubble by clicking the add message bubble option over here. In this new message bubble, we are going to paste the embed code that we got from YouTube. And you can see immediately a YouTube video pops up in this message bubble. If we hit save, if we hit publish in the top right over here, and we refresh the page, you know what, instead of going through the conversation to reach this gambit again, what we can do is I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. If you go to this URL over here, type in !_start GID equals 13. And the place I got 13 from is over here. If you look at this credit score gambit, it says 13 in the square brackets over there. So I'm just going to say start GID equals 13, hit enter. It's going to skip me to that part of the conversation. The way you handle your finances is, here's a video to help you out. Now in the chat, they have video that they can look at. So for concepts that are far too complex for a single infographic, you can add videos into your message bubble. And credit to whoever made this YouTube video. I think their YouTube channel is called The Smart Investor. It was maybe the easiest one I found when I was doing research for this webinar to understand in terms of a video to explain how credit scores affect your mortgage rates. But we don't have to end there. We really don't. Maybe videos aren't your speed. Maybe you don't like videos. Maybe you're the sort of person who likes a good old-fashioned slide deck. Yep, a slide deck. So you go onto SlideShare. You find a deck that explains what you're all about, what concept you're trying to explain. Or after September 24th, maybe you go to Scribd. I don't know how you pronounce that. Scribd? Scribed. It's probably scribed. You find a slide deck that you want to use. Same principle as the YouTube video. You click share. You click the embed code over here at the top. Select the smallest size, so 344 by 292. Again, the same dimensions as we had for the YouTube video, 300 by 200 should work well in a chat bubble. But if you take the smallest size in SlideShare, I don't know how it works in Scribd. Maybe I'll have to take a look at that in a little bit. But you copy that embed code and you jump back into your chatbot over here. Let's go to the credit score gambit, delete this video and paste the embed code. You can see that we have a slide deck embedded in our chatbot. Again, let's go, let's skip ahead in the chat conversation. Now we have a slide deck in the middle of our conversation. It's a visual element. People can flip through the slide deck to learn about this concept. They don't have to read through a bunch. Imagine trying to convey everything from these slides in chat bubbles. It would take pages and pages of chat bubbles to convey the exact same thing that you can convey through this slide deck. Again, this is another way you can add visual elements in the message bubbles to make your chatbots more visually appealing. Now, the final way, before we really need to get a move on to the out of the bubble options that you have, but the final way that you can add a visual element inside of your bubbles is to go with perhaps the most basic form of visual element that you can add in text, and that is emojis. People don't think of emojis often as visual elements, but they are. They're essentially small little pictures, and they can go a long way in making your chatbot feel more human, like we were talking about in the slides earlier. So over here, let's say we offer affordable mortgages for your needs. How can I help you today? Maybe there's no emoji over here, but if they say, I want a mortgage quote. Over here, we say, great, I need a few details to get you set up. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to separate these two messages over here. I'm going to add this over here. And when I say great, I'm going to add an emoji. We have an emoji picker over here. So if you select that, it gives you a bunch of emojis as an option. And we'll just have a smiling face. We're really happy about the fact that they have decided that they want a free mortgage quote. We're happy because that means we might get a lead, but we're also just good customer service reps, and we want the user on the other end to know that we're not some serious bureaucratic person sitting on the other end chatting with them. We are a friendly customer service rep who's happy to help them. So we can hit save over here, publish, go back to our chatbot and see what a difference it makes. Over here, again, just plain text. It adds a little bit of color to the page. It adds a visual element. It goes a long way. Just the great alone, if I cover up the emoji over here, or do my best to cover up the emoji over here, just the great alone doesn't really convey much of an emotion. But when you add the little emoji over there, it in my opinion, at the very least, does a better job of conveying how emphatic you are about saying this great over here. And that really gets back to the second reason that we were talking about over here, making your chatbots more human friendly. It conveys a level of personality that plain text on its own couldn't. And also, getting back to the point that I mentioned earlier, we use emoji when we talk to each other over chat. When we're talking to our friends and family on WhatsApp, on Facebook Messenger, on regular text messaging, on iMessage, we use emoji. So the same principle applies to your chatbots. Your chatbots should behave like a human being. They should also use emoji wherever possible, wherever appropriate. So that is what we that is what we are trying to achieve by adding this emoji over here. Now with that, we've spent a lot of time on the in the bubble options that we have. So over here, we have a chatbot that now has a little bit of visual branding in the first gambit over here. We've shown the Tarz logo. If we go into the FAQs, like I just showed you, we've added first an image, then a video, then a slide deck to sort of explain a complex concept, because it's much more efficient than just sending that explanation through a bunch of plain text messages. And we have added emojis to the text to make the text feel more human, make it feel more approachable, make it feel more friendly, and to just make it a more pleasant customer service experience. And actually, before we move to the out of the bubble stuff, I forgot my favorite form of visual element, Gifs. You can also add Gifs, just like you can add images. And Gifs, again, they serve a dual purpose. You can either add them to if you have an explainer GIF, you can add it to explain complex concepts. But my favorite use of Gifs is like we use the emojis over here to add personality to your chatbots. A GIF, a little bit of moving text on the screen, or just a clip from a video, a funny clip from a video, can go a long way in making a plain text chat conversation, a plain looking customer service conversation feel a lot more engaging and feel like there's an actual human being on the other end with a sense of humor, with feelings, with emotions, as opposed to just a piece of software. So over here, I got this GIF over here that says "That's all, folks," I think from Looney Tunes. If I go to my chatbot all the way at the end, once I've collected all of the information, I'm going to throw this GIF in just to add a splash of personality over here. Now, when our agents follow up, we're leaving them on a good note over here. We send them this GIF. Maybe they find it pleasant, maybe they don't. I think that they would, but if they do find it pleasant, if they're like, oh, that's a nice touch that they've added to the chatbot, they'll remember that when your agent follows up with them about getting a mortgage. They'll remember that, and they might be more likely to actually respond to them. So if we hit publish over here, I think the end gambit over here is 7. So let's skip ahead to that. I don't want to have to go through the entire flow. Your details have been submitted. We skipped all the way to the end of the conversation. We'll be in touch soon. Have a nice day. That's all, folks. It's a nice little touch. Adds personality to your chatbot. Now we are finally ready to move on to the out of the bubble elements that I want to talk about. Now, before we jump back into the builder, actually, no, we can jump back into the builder because I think it's demonstrated in the builder as well. So over here in the builder, we have, if you, sorry, I skipped way ahead. By default, you're in the make section of the builder. In the make section of the builder, this is where you define what your chatbot says. But in the menu on the left side of the screen, you have a bunch of other options here. You have configure, design, distribute, and share. What you want to select is the design option. Now, in the design option, it's going to show you a little mock-up of what a Tarz chatbot looks like. This is the theme that we have active right now on our chatbot. If I jump back over here, you can see that our chatbot looks a lot like the chatbot over here. And these colors over here on the right are what is defining that theme. Now, this is the default theme. And as we mentioned earlier, we don't want the default theme to be on. This speaks mainly towards that first branding reason we were talking about. We want the page to look to the user like it belongs to Tarz. We don't want it to look like it's an iMessage chat. We don't want it to look like it's a messenger chat. We want them to be able to recall that this chat conversation they had was a Tarz chat conversation. This was a conversation they had with Tarz Finance, in this case, about a mortgage. And the best way to do that is to infuse your branding into the way the elements of the chat interface look. And broadly speaking, over here, there are 4 elements that we need to talk about. So the first one is, I'm not going to go in order of these bubbles over here. I'm going to go in an order which I think makes more sense for you guys to understand. The first element that we are going to be talking about is the chat background. So this white space over here around the chat bubbles, this white space is the chat background. And it's, I think, the third bubble over here. So over here, of these 4 little color bubbles over here, the chat background is the third one. If I select that, it gives me the option of changing those options. The second element on the page that we can mess around with, that we can change, is the page background. So for desktop users, this is applicable. For mobile users, it's not, but it's all of the space around the chat area. So this dark gray stuff around the chat area, that is the page background. Over here, again, in our chatbot, we can see that same dark gray area, the same white area, that's the chat background. And this is the page background, which is the gray, the dark gray background around the chat area. The third element that we can mess around with is the bot message bubbles. So over here we have these messages that they're a pretty plain looking gray. I'm not sure where we got this from. I think we got our inspiration from either Messenger or iMessage, but a plain looking gray. That's what we have over here. These are the bot message bubble colors. If I select that, you can, again, over here, select the color that you want these message bubbles to be. And then finally, we have the user message bubble colors. And the user message bubble colors are essentially what color the user's message is going to be when they appear on the screen. So if I refresh over here, you can see that you can see that these quick reply buttons over here are blue. We when we click on one of these quick reply buttons, you can see that the message bubbles that appear on the screen are also blue. So that is our message bubble color. Now that we have those elements out of the way, now that you know what elements we are going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about the chat background, we're going to be talking about the page background, we're going to be talking about the bot messages and the user messages. We can actually go about changing these elements to make the bot feel more like it is a Tarz chatbot. And the one I like to start off with is the chat background, the white area around the message bubbles. And the reason I like to start with the chat background is because this is the one visual element on the screen which is in contact, which is adjacent to every single other visual element. It has a border with the page background over here. It has a border with the user message bubbles. in the quick reply options and when they appear in the chat conversation, and it shares a border with the bot message bubbles as well. So defining what color or what branding we're going to add into this chat area is going to help us decide what we want these other elements to look like so that they match. So there are two approaches you can take to deciding what your chat background is going to look like. The first one is to, if you want to add branding, you can add an image to that chat background. And the image that I usually use is I just use the company's logo. So we're going to go back here. Instead of taking the full logo, we might just take this one over here where it's just the icon. It's not the text as well. We're going to copy the image address, jump back in here, select chat background, select image, and paste the URL. Once we hit apply, we can change the fitting to see what it looks like. And now we have the actual logo in the background. Now this doesn't really work with our logo, and it might work with your logo as well. With some logos, this looks really good. But if I publish this right now and go to the next page, I personally don't think it looks good when we have our logo in the background over here for two reasons. Oh, I forgot to hit save. You have to hit save over here and then publish. Now, if we refresh this page, in my opinion, this doesn't look particularly good. And the reason it doesn't look particularly good is because our logo looks like a chat conversation, and we're having a chat conversation on top of a logo that looks like a chat conversation. That does not make any sense to me. So in this case, in a situation where your logo doesn't really look good in the background of the chat conversation, what you can do is you can take a second approach. And that second approach is, instead of using an image, what you can do is you can make the chat background your primary brand color. So if I jump to our website over here, you can see that our primary brand color is this purple at the top over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my handy color pick eyedropper Chrome extension. I'm going to select this over here, copy the hexadecimal color value. So over here it's 6D33AA. Jump back in here, and instead of selecting image, I'm going to select solid background, solid color, and paste that hexadecimal that I just got from the page. Once I hit close, hit save, and publish, in my opinion, this looks a lot better. It looks a lot better than having a chat on top of a chat. So now now we have added our primary brand color into the background of the into the chat background. Now with this in place, the next step is to match all of the other elements to this one background. So we can't choose a color that clashes with it in the page background over here. We can't choose a color that clashes with it in these user message bubbles or in the bot message bubbles, because if they do clash, it's going to look a little weird. It's going to look weird because they're adjacent to each other, and they're going to clash. We don't want that to happen. So what are some tactics you can use to select the colors for these other elements on the page? The first element that I'm going to change over here, the first element that I'm going to work on is I'm going to work on these bubbles over here. Let's start with the user message bubbles, because I think this requires a little bit more thinking. If you want to change the user message bubbles, the way I like to think about it is these quick reply options over here, the user messages that get sent, are essentially CTAs. You are expecting the user to click on the CTA over here to start the conversation. So look at your regular website and look at what color your CTAs are. So our CTAs over here are green. That's why our colors are purple and green. So it makes sense that our CTAs over here are green as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my color pick eyedropper. I'm going to get the hexadecimals for this CTA. I'm going to jump back in here, and where it says user message bubble, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to paste the hexadecimal for that green over there and hit save. Now we can hit publish, refresh the page, and now we have a chatbot starting to take shape. Instead of looking like that generic iMessage Facebook Messenger color, we're starting to have a chatbot that looks and feels a little more like it could fit on this web page over here. It has the same sort of color scheme. It has the same sort of aesthetic. Okay, so now we have our user message bubbles done. We are essentially structuring them like CTAs, so that they fit in with the aesthetic of our main web page. Now we can move on to the bot message bubbles. And honestly, in this case, I am not the way I like to go with the bot message bubbles is if you have a third color in your visual aesthetic of your company, go ahead and use that third color. If you don't, like we don't, like in our case, what's our third color? It's white, I guess. You can just go with plain white. White goes well in most dark backgrounds, in my experience. So if your brand color over here is a darker background like ours is, you can just go with a regular white or gray message bubble for the chatbot. Over here, I'm going to make it completely white, no amount of gray in it. If you have, on the other hand, a much lighter background, you could choose something closer to a black for the message bubbles. It might look a little better. But over here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose a message bubble color that matches with the rest of the page. If you want inspiration for this, the best place to go is your existing website. Over here, we've noticed that the color white goes well as a color to fill out our folds with the purple that we have on the screen. So what are we going to do? We're going to take that same white and we're going to add it over here as the message bubble colors so that it matches with our purple. This way, the chatbot looks even more like our web page. It looks like it could absolutely fit on our web page because it has the exact same color scheme. This chatbot, unlike the Facebook Messenger iMessage interface that we had before, looks like it could have come from this web page. It has the exact same color scheme over here. So this is, I'd definitely say a plus in the visual appeal, visual appeal book. And that finally leaves us with the last element on the page, which is the page background. Now I'm a little bit, I guess you could say conservative when it comes to making page backgrounds. I find that with most colors that you put in the chat background, a white background works perfectly fine. And the reason I like a white background is because the white background makes the shadow around your chat background. So it makes the shadow around this place where your chat is happening a little more evident. And that adding that shadow, in my opinion, makes the page look a little better. So generally speaking, I tend to go with a white background. But another option that you could take is you could add an actual image to the background over here. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like actually. Rather than changing it over here, I'm gonna go to one of our live deployments. This is the Montana DMV. Levi, who is on this webinar, I believe, created this chatbot, but they have done a pretty good job of implementing. So actually I clicked on the widget a little too soon, so it opened up in a new tab, but you get the idea. Over here you can see, first of all, like I mentioned before, one of the options that you have is to add your logo in the background. He's added the DMV logo in the background over here. This is a great implementation of it. But as you can see over here, instead of just going with a plain white background or a plain solid color, he's added an image in the background to make the page look a little bit better. And it sort of fits with the aesthetic of, he's got a sign pointing to different cities in Montana. This is the Montana DMV, and he's got a nice little vista of, I guess, a forest in Montana. It fits with the aesthetic of being a Montana DMV, and does a good job of sprucing the page up a little bit. So this is another option that you can go with to make your chatbots more visually appealing. using the page background. And with that, I actually think that we are all done with all of the tactics that I have. This is all the stuff that I go through. This is the checklist that I go through when I'm building a chatbot. These are the things that I like to look for. These are the things that I like to add in my chatbots to make them more visually appealing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them right now. And for the people who have to leave, wow, this is probably the most on time we've ever been. It's 10:01, so we're a minute over time, I think, but close enough. If you have any questions, feel free to, I don't know why I click share. I meant to click present. You can see the whole Tarz team over there. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on these, using these channels over here. You can call us. You can reach out to me on email at arnav@hellotarz.com, or you can go to our website and set up a demo with us. If you have any questions right now, though, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Yeah, that's it for today. I am going to stay on for maybe a minute longer. If you guys have any questions, drop them in. If not, we can end this session. Doesn't seem like anyone has any questions right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this session, let you guys carry on with your days. I'm sure you guys have a lot of stuff to get done. And I'm going to go and try to make this recording ready and send it out to you guys so that you guys have something to take home with you guys. And you can refer back to this webinar whenever you want to, so that you can make your chatbots look better. Thank you guys for joining us today. It's been a pleasure as always. And be sure to keep a lookout for our next webinar. We should be hosting one next week.